All right, I'm a little bit overdue for one of these. I've been busy, is about all I could say. And I was sitting here when I was paging through AA literature. I guess at heart, I must be a glutton for punishment if I want, if I actually want to delve in and read this shit. But I had promised that I would start taking AA topics and AA literature and kind of tearing them up. The last time I was able to do a video, so I was kind of up in debate about which one I wanted to start with, but I saw this one thing here that was real familiar to me because they like to read it at least every other meeting. It seemed like when I was going, and it's almost kind of funny how they'll tell you that you need to read the book all the time. And if you just sit around in enough meetings, you hear the whole thing. I mean, over and over and over and over and over again. But that's kind of how cult brainwashing works. But the one thing that kind of struck me, because it's been a long time since I've actually really looked at any of this stuff in depth, I guess you could say. But the first time in a while that I've actually looked at it, and the first thing that struck me was how, I guess you could say, how poorly written the whole entire thing is. It's not even good writing. I mean, I'm not no literary professor or something like that, but it's just so grammatically incorrect, and it's just, I don't know, it's hard for me to believe that I ever took any of this stuff remotely seriously. Yet there was a time that it was just so profound for me, and now I'm sitting here looking at it, and I'm just, all I could do is shake my head. But I used to wonder, because I would hear this stuff read in meetings, and I'd see everybody nodding their heads vigorously with it, and I'd see people talking about how everything in the book applies to them, and I kind of wonder how much of that is just the pressure of being in something like AA, where you're sort of, I don't think anything illustrates the line from the Rush song, "Conform or be cast out," better than a place like AA. You're either going to start talking in the same vein that everyone else is talking, or you're going to behave the same way everyone else is behaving, or you'll find that AA is not so loving, tolerant, or a very welcome place after all. And I was going over things in my own background when I was thinking back to the time when I was really new at all of this, and I was trying to remember what parts of this would have actually resonated with me, because it all looks so ridiculous right now. But I think at the time, part of the reason that I was so desperate for this to resonate with me was because I really, truly didn't understand what was going on with me in my life at the time that my drinking was so spiraling out of control, and I didn't really have a viable alternative as to what to do about it. Because really and truly, I mean, I think drank what I would say fairly normally for a lot of years. I mean, it was a take it or leave it situation. I drank on weekends, drank at parties, I drank with friends, but it wasn't the all-encompassing thing that it became later on in life. And rather than actually try to analyze what was happening in my life or what was going on with me, that kept making me turn more and more to it as a means to escape what was an intolerable situation. It was just real easy to buy into this idea that I've got some kind of disease that controls me, that causes me to be powerless over it, and that, without some kind of higher power, or without the steps, or without any of this other stuff, there's no way to stop it. I mean, I guess at the time that I was exposed to AA, it was, like I've said before in other videos, it was the early 2000s, and there wasn't really a large critical voice of AA against AA that could be heard all online, and of course stuff like Facebook and stuff didn't exist. So I guess in part, part of the reason I fell for the brainwashing had to do with the fact that I sincerely believed these were a bunch of people that were all drunks like myself that had found some magical cure for the whole entire problem. And there was a desperation, I think, that existed in me, to want to fit in. Because, you know, anytime you're caught up in, you know, your addictive behavior or you're drinking or whatnot, for me, I eventually did get kind of isolated, you know, from people in general. I mean, I'm not going to go into a long narrative about my past or anything, maybe in another, you know, but I was just kind of analyzing how this could have ever resonated with me because it all seems so ludicrous right now. But I remember meeting after meeting after meeting, I'd hear this shit. And the one I wanted to look at, and I don't know how far along in the chapter I'll get on this video, but it was called More About Alcoholism. And, you know, it starts out, because I used to hear it all the time, every other meeting, especially in newcomer meetings, they'd read this shit to people, and everybody would, like I said, mechanically nod their heads, you know, and just utter agreement with this stuff like it was just absolute truth. And it couldn't be questioned, and there couldn't be a flaw in it, or there couldn't be anything even remotely looked at as, you know, this is just one dude writing a bunch of bullshit. It's just his take on something. It's not like stone tablets off of a mountain that were chiseled in by lightning, you know. But it was the opening sentence is like, most of us have been unwilling to admit that we were real alcoholics. Well, you see right there, you've already got a problem because you're saying most of us, okay? You're speaking by proxy for everyone. You're speaking for everyone on earth that's ever had a drinking problem. You're speaking for, you know, everybody, all right? So in that one sentence, you made a gross generalization, and not only that, you've committed the fallacy of what is called no true Scotsman. You know, most of us are unwilling to admit we're real alcoholics. Well, I mean, define for me what you mean by real. I mean, you know, do you have some kind of tangible evidence other than the fact that, you know, I got drunk a lot and my life went all out of control and everything fell apart? I mean, do you have a tangible evidence for something called a real alcoholic? Because if you're going to assert that there's such a thing as a real alcoholic, I mean, what is everyone else who has a drinking problem, a fake alcoholic? I mean, just right there, most of us have been unwilling to admit. You know, I knew, personally, I knew that I had a drinking problem. You know, I knew that I was drinking way too much, and I knew that my situation in life was pretty screwed up. It never occurred to me to think about the fact that there must be a reason why I was drinking the way I was drinking. That's something that, you know, it just seemed like it was just something I couldn't have conceived of at the time. You know, there might be a reason why you keep turning to the bottle more and more and more. There might be a reason, something going on in your life that's so intolerable that you keep going to the bottle, and it's not no more a source of pleasure, but a source of escape. I mean, take a look at your life. Take a look at what's going on with you. Take a look at what you're feeling. Because that has a lot more to do with what fuels people's addictions, in my opinion. Or at least I know for a fact in my case, personally, far more than just this idea that, you know, I'm unwilling to admit I've got a drinking problem. Oh, I forgot. A real alcoholic. I mean, you've said shit in that sentence. You've just said a lot without saying anything. No person likes to think he's bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Okay, last time I checked, I have a skeleton, a nervous system, I have a brain, I have lungs, I have kidneys, I have intestines. So exactly how am I bodily different from my fellow man? If you're talking about chemical imbalance, which he obviously was not, because this was the 1930s, so he didn't even know anything about something called a chemical imbalance, or couldn't even conceive of that. But the last time I checked, chemical imbalances are treated by medication. They're not treated by surrendering to some phony book that some dude wrote that he's just making all these grandiose statements to, and allowing a group of weirdos to tell you what to do for the rest of your life, and telling you you're immoral and you're selfish and full of resentment and anger. And, you know, last time I checked, you don't treat chemical imbalances with that. But so no person likes to think he's bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Mentally, well, where you're born, when you were born, the time period you were born in, Generation X here, but the neighborhoods you grew up in, the parents you've had, the schools you went to, the people you've met in life, the events that have happened to you, on and on and on and on, shape who you are as a person. Your experiences, your collections of memories, your the bad and good things that have happened, moments that have uplifted you, moments that have destroyed you, whatever, ultimately shape you to be the person you are. So there's no such thing as a group of fellows over here and you're over here bodily and mentally different from them. Each individual is unique. So once again, he said a lot without saying anything. Therefore, it's not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove that we could drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his liquor is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. Oh, he just, makes it all so fucking dramatic here. I didn't have a great obsession to worry about how other people were drinking. I didn't have a great obsession to even think about, like I never did crack open a bottle of vodka, at 5 a.m. in the morning and turn it up and say, you know what? I just wished I could be like my fellows over there, the ones that are bodily and mentally different from me. I wished I could, have a shot at 5 p.m. at happy hour time and leave it. I never really thought like that at all. Most of the time, for me, when my addiction was spiraling out of control, especially when it was a physical type thing, I was waking up in the morning thinking, man, my life is shit. Man, I wished I could figure out a way to fix this fucking situation. That's what I was thinking about. And of course, I just kept blaming the drinking. If I could just stop drinking, everything would be great and wonderful. I didn't realize that, again, it was something that I didn't develop until I was much, much older, that maybe I needed to take a look at what was going on in my life that was making it so intolerable. In my case, I felt trapped. I felt trapped by the circumstances of my own existence, and I didn't see a viable way out. I didn't see any way to change my current situation and circumstances. And it seemed like the more that I tried to resist my current situation and circumstances without trying to look for methods to get out, the more I turned to the bottle. I mean, I could offer as proof the fact that after I've cut a lot of the toxic people that were in my life out. We're talking about family, former friends, and all of that. And since that time, and since I did get the right help with the medications and everything, I desire to drink's pretty much gone. So I think external circumstances, in my case, and I think in the case of many other people, probably plays a larger role in your addiction than you really realize. So what he's doing here is just saying a lot without saying anything. I don't think anybody with addiction is actually currently like going to a liquor store and saying, I wished I could drink like that guy in front of me who's got a bottle of vodka just like I've got a bottle of vodka. I bet he's not drinking the bottle of vodka the way I'm doing it. I mean, it's ridiculous. Then he goes on to say the persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. Well, you're making a grandiose statement that actually proves absolutely nothing. It doesn't say you don't have any proof that it's a persistence of an illusion, okay, that's driving people in their addictions. I mean, I was under no illusion that I was going to drink normally when my alcoholism spiraled out of control the way it did. I wasn't thinking to myself, when I was popping up out of bed at 1 a.m. and I was drinking a half pint so I could get back to some sleep, and then I'd wake up at about 5 o'clock, and in order to get ready for work, I'd have to drink another half pint. I wasn't operating under some delusion that I don't have a drinking problem or that I'm going to be like my fellow man or any of the rest of that shit. I was trapped in a hopeless cycle of addiction and didn't see a way out. And by the time I was at that stage, I was just physically addicted. Hell, I fucking knew I had a problem. I mean, if somebody came to me and said, you're going to kill yourself if you keep drinking like that, I'd have said, yeah, no fucking shit. I know that. He's acting like that everybody who's, sitting out on a street corner with a needle in their arm has no idea that they're in danger of dying from their addiction. I mean, more stupidity. Look, I haven't even made it but through the first paragraph, and I'm already, this much bullshit. I may have to make 3 or 4 of these just for this one fucking chapter alone. It'll give me something to do, though, and it'll also it might put some pressure on me to make these videos more regularly. I mean, if I really tried, I could probably do better than I've been doing this month of July. You know, only 2 videos for this month. That's, you know. Okay, so then he goes on with more blabbering. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. Oh yeah, like when you're really drinking yourself to death every day, you have no idea whatsoever that you got a bad drinking problem. You know, like when you're you know, vomiting and nauseated and you got the shakes and your head is pounding and you just think to yourself, all I need is a bottle, you know, of liquor to cause the shakes and the tremors to go away. You know, when all that's happening, your innermost self and your brain is actually saying, you know, everything's cool. You don't have a problem. You know you don't have a problem. You know, I'm only you know, sick 99% of the time when I'm not intoxicated, but my innermost self believes everything's Jake. I mean, that's another bullshit statement. I don't think if you ask anybody who was really down and out into their addiction, what their innermost self thought, which, I mean, there's no such, you know, your innermost self is actually saying, no, nothing wrong here. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I never thought that, okay? I never, when I was drinking at 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., ever said, there's no problem here. He's acting like that we're all just drinking ourselves into oblivion because we're worried about the fact that we might not be able to drink like normal people and we're in denial of our reality. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. That's like, I remember somebody saying, that they told a drug addict, you know, life is hard. Like a drug addict who's living on the streets, doing everything and anything to get the drug doesn't know that life is hard. I mean, fucking morons. The delusion that we are like other people or presently may be had to be smashed. Again, I never labored under some weird form of denial that said that there was nothing wrong with me while I was getting drunk. So I don't know what he's talking about. Really and truly, he's reiterated this like 3 or 4 times in like almost a paragraph and a half. He could have really used an editor. You know, throat was dry there for a second. We alcoholics are men and women who had lost the ability to control our drinking. We know that no real alcoholic ever recovered this control. Okay. That's a lie. They've proven, actually, well, I won't use the words they've proven because that's actually kind of a falsity in itself. In fact, it irks me at times when I see people trying to make a claim of some sort and they'll say something like they've already proven. That's actually kind of a logical fallacy type thing. That would be a whole nother video if I got into that. But what I could say is that they have shown, statistically speaking, that plenty of people have actually matured out of their addictions, that plenty of people have actually regained control and have been able to moderate and whatever else. As a matter of fact, there was some controlled studies that I could post links to. They're in the Orange Papers. The site is back up and running, by the way. That show that controlled groups that were studied by doctors and scientists, that the people who had the most success rates were the ones who actually quit on their own without any treatment. They also showed people who tried to quit with AA had 5 times the binge rate, and the suicide rates were out of control. So I do have some statistical evidence to back up what I'm saying right there. But to say no real alcoholic, which you still have not established to me what a real alcoholic is, that ever recovered his control, you made a grandiose statement that proves absolutely nothing. I mean, anybody can make a grand, sweeping statement, and it has no basis in fact whatsoever. I could actually say, we know that every asphalt street can suffer in the winter if it ices over. It's meaningless. All of us felt at times that we were regaining control, but such intervals, usually brief, were inevitably followed by still less control. I mean, you really need an editor for this. which led in time to pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. It's like, how many ugly adjectives can I stick into a word, into a sentence, because I'm really not educated enough to know the big words, but I got to say something dramatic to really sell this to the audience. We're convinced to a man that alcoholics of our type are in the grip of a progressive illness. Well, just because you're convinced doesn't mean it's true. Over any considerable period, we get worse, never better. Well, one thing he's doing here again is speaking by proxy for everyone. Brief periods of control that we all felt we were regaining. Are you saying because I had a couple of nights where I didn't get as plastered as I did the last 2 nights that I was regaining control for worse relapses to come, and this led me down some horrifying path or something like that? I mean, even I'm gonna say it like this. Let's just say what he's saying is true. Let's say that that people get brief periods of control and then it gets worse. I could argue that it's probably because the intolerable situation in your life, or the intolerable situations mentally, or any number of internal, external circumstances have not actually changed in your life, so naturally you keep going back to the bottle really heavy. Case in point is this: for a long time in AA, I'd get a dry period and then I'd get drunk, and a drunk binge would happen for a little while, and then I'd get a dry period, get drunk, get a dry period, get drunk. The reason that was happening, it wasn't like some illusion that I was regaining control and followed by worse relapse and incomprehensible demoralization. No, it was because the external circumstances of my life and my own mental inability to try to figure out viable ways in which to actually improve my own life, improve my own surroundings, and do something differently, because none of that changed, because I didn't address any of those reasons why I originally drank to begin with, then naturally, of course, I was only going to quit drinking for a short while. Naturally, people have worse relapses in AA after a short period of time because they are not given any tools whatsoever to enable them to live better, or to look at their own lives and evaluate it and say, what do I need to do in my life? What do I need to change in my life that might be a contributing factor to my destructive behavior or my addiction? It's not about some weird mythical illusion that we're all living in, and that's the reason behind all of this, that all we got to do to solve the problem is just admit that we're a real alcoholic and smash our delusions. I mean, this has no absolute basis in fact whatsoever. I mean, this is just rambling. There's nothing to this. We are like men who have lost their legs. They never grow new ones. You know what? Why don't you go up to a guy who actually lost his legs, a guy that lost his legs, on the job or in a car accident or something like that, and you say, you know something, buddy? I know you're in a wheelchair. I know you'll never be able to walk again unless, well, in today's world, even with prosthetics, you won't be able to feel your feet on the ground. I know that it must suck that you lost your legs, but guess what? I'm just like you, because, for a long time in my life, I loved to get drunk every night, and now I can't get drunk anymore, so I'm just like you, the guy that lost his legs. I mean, I think that would be pretty fucking insulting if you said that to someone who lost their legs. It's kind of like this one part in the book where they talk about if someone has cancer, everyone's sorry for him, but not for us. Oh yeah, you who you're just fucking drunk and you can't figure out a way to stop being drunk. You got it worse than a cancer patient. I mean, I don't think at any given time in my drinking career, even when I was drinking at 5 a.m., because when you drink at 5 a.m., there's actually, when that hangover dies and that first morning buzz kicks in, it's actually a pretty awesome high. I never said, oh, the guy in the cancer ward right now has got it harder. I mean, it hasn't got it as hard as I do. I mean, no words. I think right now, because this thing's going to shift into something, I'm not going to read the whole entire chapter for any video. But, I just started with this paragraph. I may cover some more in the next video on this. It may be a part 2 to it. Because some of it just bears skipping because it's just repetitive. The same thing over and over and over and over again. So pretty much, I guess, on the next video I make, what I'll do is I'll grab some snippets here and there, and then I'll finish it off with that one, because there's no point going over line by line of this shit, because he's just saying the same thing over and over and over again. You know, we're all doomed, and we're all hopeless, and we'll never get better unless we join a religious cult and turn our will and our lives over to it. You know. Anyway, I'll see you guys pretty soon, I hope.